So if simple math actually worked in the real world, I mean, a massive paycheck plus the ability to work from your couch in sweatpants would equal, like, ultimate job satisfaction.
Oh, absolutely. Feels totally intuitive.
Right.
Yeah.
But then you actually look at the data on human motivation, and that simple math just completely falls apart. Because the people who are most satisfied with their day-to-day jobs often work incredibly long hours in really high-stress, comparatively underpaid government agencies like NASA, for example.
Yeah, it is basically the ultimate psychological paradox. What we think we want in our careers and what actually fulfills us neurologically are often just in complete opposition.
Which is exactly why we're taking this deep dive today into the social dimension of work. We're looking at what really makes organizations tick, how they succeed or how they mutate into these toxic environments. And to tackle this, we're going to try a slightly different dynamic today. Yeah, I'm going to formally adopt the role of the highly inquisitive student, and you're going to be the expert lecturer guiding us through the material. Though, fair warning, Professor, I've done my reading, and I am fully prepared to debate the syllabus.
I wouldn't expect anything less from my star pupil.
Yeah.
I've got my metaphorical tweed jacket on, the elbow patches are secure, and class is officially in session.
Excellent. So the foundational text for our curriculum today is section 13.3 of chapter 13 from Psychology 2E. Let's start at the ground floor here, the individual employee. We all throw around the phrase job satisfaction, but scientifically, Edwin Locke defined this back in, I think, 1976.
Yes, 1976. He defined it as a state of feeling resulting from appraising one's job experiences. It's this intersection of cognition and affect.
Right, and that distinction between cognition and affect is, well, it's crucial, isn't it? We aren't just talking about a logical spreadsheet of pros and cons.
Not at all. We are talking about how a Tuesday morning status meeting actually makes your nervous system feel. Polling organizations, like Gallup, they use massive 1 to 5 Likert scales across the entire economy to measure this.
Like strongly agree to strongly disagree.
Exactly. But what they're really trying to quantify is that underlying emotional resonance.
Well, let's look at the biggest supposed driver of that emotion compensation. The textbook references a major 2010 study by Judge and colleagues showing only a weak correlation between pay level and job satisfaction, which is just a massive bombshell.
It really is.
But logically, I mean, it has to be the hedonic treadmill at work, right? Like you get a raise, you buy a nicer car, and 6 months later, you aren't jumping for joy over the car anymore. It's just the car you expect to have.
It is the hedonic treadmill, yeah. But the psychological mechanism is actually more insidious than just getting used to nicer things.
Wait, really? How so?
The data shows that once you adapt to the new salary, your internal metric for enough permanently shifts. So the initial thrill of the raise evaporates because your brain recategorizes that money not as a reward, but as a baseline expectation.
Oh, wow. So if throwing money at people doesn't sustain their nervous system, what actually does?
The strongest predictor of overall job satisfaction is what psychologists call the work content factor.
Okay, which includes variety, difficulty, and role clarity. I mean, this is where the NASA example perfectly illustrates the point, right?
Absolutely.
Because the federal government literally tracks job satisfaction across its agencies. NASA and the Commerce Department consistently rank at the top, while the Department of Homeland Security ranks way at the bottom.
Right, and think about the mission at NASA. Literally exploring the cosmos. It offers off-the-charts variety and difficulty. You're constantly solving novel problems. We have this fundamental psychological need for competence and mastery.
So when your work content is sufficiently challenging, you enter like a state of flow?
Precisely. Knowing your purpose, having crystal clear role clarity, and feeling appropriately challenged that sustains your daily emotional state far longer than the memory of your last bonus.
And from an employer's perspective, this has to be vital. The text mentions that high job satisfaction strongly correlates with organizational citizenship.
Yeah, those are the discretionary behaviors, the things not in your job description.
Like mentoring a junior employee or staying late to fix a glitch just because you actually care about the outcome.
Right. And conversely, low satisfaction leads to withdrawal behaviors. You see higher absenteeism. But interestingly, Section 13.3 notes the relationship between low satisfaction and actual turnover, like people officially quitting, is surprisingly weak.
That's fascinating. So people might completely despise their jobs, but they stay out of fear or inertia or, golden handcuffs?
Exactly. They don't quit. They just quietly check out, and their performance completely tanks.
They remain physically present, but psychologically absent. But hold on, Professor. This internal appraisal doesn't just happen in a vacuum. We aren't just workers. We are humans with lives, partners, kids.
Very true.
If role clarity and challenging work make us happy, how does the friction of our personal lives bleed into that satisfaction?
Well, that brings us to the concept of job strain, or stress. Stress occurs when an employee perceives that the demands placed on them exceed their ability to meet them.
Right.
And researchers Greenhouse and Boutel identified 3 specific sources of work-family conflict. Those are time, strain, and specific behaviors.
Okay, the first two are pretty obvious. Time spent at work is obviously time away from family. Strain is the emotional exhaustion that leaves you with like nothing in the tank for your kids. But unpack specific behaviors for me. What is the actual psychological friction there?
It's basically the exhaustion of code switching. Think of a defense attorney or a crisis PR manager. Their job requires them to be hyper-aggressive, deeply skeptical, and highly combative.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Yeah, if they bring that specific behavioral requirement home, if they cross-examine their spouse over dinner, it causes massive domestic conflict. Suppressing those ingrained work behaviors the moment you walk through the front door requires immense cognitive load.
Wow. And let's be clear about the demographics here. The research consistently shows that women report significantly greater levels of stress from work-family conflict, right? Because society still forces them to shoulder a disproportionate share of domestic and caregiving responsibilities.
Yes, absolutely. The structural inequality acts as a huge amplifier for all 3 of those conflict sources.
So as a modern progressive worker, my instinct is that telecommuting has to be the ultimate cure for this.
You'd think so.
Yeah. If I'm working from home, I have ultimate control. The commute is 0. I can throw a load of laundry in between Zoom calls. Shouldn't stress, just plummet.
You really would think so. But the research throws a massive curveball here. According to a study by LaPierre and Allen mentioned in the textbook, telecommuting can actually make work-family conflict worse.
Wait, that seems completely backwards. Why? Does the physical presence of the laundry actually drain your cognitive load because you just can't mentally escape it?
You've hit the nail on the head. It's called boundary theory. When you work in an office, the physical commute acts as a decompression chamber. The physical space creates a psychological boundary.
So when you work from your kitchen table, the boundary just vanishes.
Exactly. The demands of your family are glaringly evident while you are trying to, draft a proposal. The cognitive load of ignoring the unwashed dishes or the barking dog actively depletes the energy you need for your actual work content.
So if telecommuting actually blurs the boundary and makes us more stressed, who is the gatekeeper to our sanity here? HR policies.
Actually, the most effective workplace support is an understanding immediate supervisor. I mean, practical support at home, like a partner actually doing the chores, is crucial. But at work, a boss who gives you the autonomy to manage your life is far more effective than an overarching, rigid corporate policy. Oh, and we also have to mention major organizational stressors like downsizing and corporate mergers.
Right. The text had that visual, figure 13.14, showing 2 merged companies. You suddenly have 2 sales teams, 2 accounting departments. It leads inevitably to stress, staff cuts, and a real struggle to connect with the new combined group.
Exactly. Which naturally forces us to look at management. Because if my supervisor is the linchpin to my sanity during a merger or just day-to-day, their underlying philosophy about human nature is going to dictate my daily experience.
Enter Douglas McGregor's Theory X and Theory Y.
Welcome to it.
Right.
These aren't just management styles. They're fundamental assumptions about humanity. Theory X managers operate on the assumption that people inherently loathe work, avoid responsibility, and must be coerced.
So that's the classic command and control. Punching clocks, ignoring employee suggestions, viewing people as inherently lazy components that need to be policed.
Precisely. And Theory Y is the complete opposite. It assumes people actually seek out inner satisfaction from their work, they crave responsibility, and they thrive when they have input. The textbook uses Toyota as a prime example.
Oh, right, where any line worker at Toyota has the authority to stop the entire assembly line if they spot a defect.
Yes. The psychological trust there is immense. A Theory X boss would rather produce 1,000 defective cars than give a floor worker the authority to halt production.
Because a Theory X boss doesn't believe the worker actually cares about the quality of the car, Theory Y empowers them because it assumes the worker takes pride in their output.
Exactly.
Now, in that Same vein of trusting employees, I was looking at Donald Clifton's strengths-based management. The premise is really attractive. Stop trying to fix an employee's weaknesses and instead hyper-focus on their enduring talent.
It sounds great in theory.
But the text notes a pretty significant flaw found by researchers Kaiser and Overfield.
Yes, it's the danger of the overused strength. Kaiser and Overfield found that when managers focus entirely on what they are already good at, they neglect their weaknesses to the point of structural failure.
Right, so if you have a leader whose profound strength is big picture visionary thinking, and you just let them lean entirely into that, they completely abandon detail orientation. Eventually, the vision collapses because nobody is doing the actual math.
Exactly. Strengths can easily become liabilities if they aren't balanced. We also see different overarching styles of leadership, specifically bases transactional versus transformational models.
Okay, so transactional leaders maintain the status quo. It's a system of rewards and punishments. Hit this quota, get a bonus, miss it, you're on a performance improvement plan.
Right. Transformational leaders, on the other hand, are charismatic. They inspire, they stimulate critical thinking, and they focus on the individual's growth.
And there are nuanced gender differences here, right?
Yes. Meta-analyses by Eagly and colleagues found that women tend to lean slightly toward an interpersonal, democratic, and transformational style, while men tend to lean toward a task-oriented, autocratic, and transactional style.
Though the text is careful to note that these aren't absolute biological imperatives, leaders of both genders are heavily constrained by the overarching culture of the corporation they are trying to survive in.
Absolutely.
But Professor, here's my biggest question. We spend so much time analyzing the leader, but leadership is a dynamic. It requires a follower. What if the follower doesn't want to be transformed?
That is a brilliant pivot, and it's the focus of an emerging field of research called followership. For decades, organizational psychology acted like the leader was the only variable that mattered. But followership recognizes that the psychological makeup of the employee dictates which leadership style will actually succeed.
So it's an interlocking puzzle. If I'm an employee with a high need for autonomy, a highly structured Theory X transactional leader is going to utterly destroy my job satisfaction.
100%. It will be a nightmare. But consider the employee with a low need for growth. This isn't a bad employee. They just view work as a means to an end. They want to come in, do excellent work, and go home to their family.
Right.
If you pair them with a highly transformational leader who constantly pushes them to innovate, attend seminars, and disrupt the space, that employee is going to experience massive burnout.
So the leader's attempt to inspire actually becomes a source of acute job strain.
Precisely. Variables like extroversion, the need for structure, the need for growth, these follower traits determine whether a boss is a mentor or a tormentor.
So we have these highly individual followers managed by leaders with their own specific philosophies, and then the organization throws them all into a blender and calls it a team. Let's examine team dynamics. Organizations love teams because cognitive diversity theoretically solves complex problems faster, but they fail constantly.
They fail because of deeply ingrained human social glitches, like social loafing, where individuals hide in the group effort to avoid exerting themselves, or conformity effects, where the desire for group harmony overrides critical thinking, leading to disastrous groupthink.
Not to mention poor communication. Oh, and the team halo effect. I love this concept. When the product launches successfully, the team is celebrated. But if the launch fails, human nature forces us to seek a scapegoat, and we blame an individual.
Exactly. The marketing team is brilliant, but Steve really blew the rollout.
Poor Steve.
But when structured correctly, the diversity of a team is its greatest asset. The Hugendorn study highlighted in the text is a perfect example. They analyzed business school project teams and found that gender-balanced teams significantly outperformed male-dominated teams in actual sales and profits.
And the mechanism there isn't just about optics. It's that balanced teams possess a wider spectrum of cognitive approaches and communication styles, which actively prevents that dangerous groupthink we just talked about.
Yes. And there are four main types of teams we see. Problem resolution teams, like scientists at the CDC, creative teams, like car design squads, tactical teams, like a SWAT unit, and now virtual teams. And all of these teams operate within the invisible architecture of organizational culture.
Right.
Researchers Ostroff, Kinnicky, and Tamkins break this culture down into three distinct layers.
I found this part so fascinating. The outer layer is observable artifacts. So the inside jokes, the jargon, the open concept office, the ping pong table in the break room.
Then you have the middle layer, espoused values. These are the concepts management explicitly promotes. We value work-life balance, or we move fast and break things.
And then there is the core, the deepest layer, basic assumptions. These are the unwritten, unquestioned beliefs about how things actually work. And the friction happens when the espoused values clash with the basic assumptions.
Yes.
Managing espouses work-life balance, but the basic assumption is that if you don't answer a Slack message at 11 p.m., you aren't a team player.
Exactly. And managing that culture is incredibly difficult, especially with diversity training. Though Pettigrew and Trop found that intergroup contact really does reduce prejudice, especially under conditions of equal standing and common goals. But it's also hard with a diverse, multi-generational workforce. You have baby boomers, Gen X, and millennials, all operating with completely different basic assumptions about loyalty and work.
It sounds like a massive cultural exchange program. Millennials bring the tech, boomers bring the institutional wisdom. Because baby boomers generally value institutional loyalty, while millennials and Gen Xers lack that inherent loyalty. They view their careers as free agent portfolios. They want choices, feedback, and work-life balance.
Which is why the textbook introduces interventions like reverse mentoring. Instead of the traditional top-down approach, a younger employee mentors a senior employee on new digital platforms or cultural trends, while the senior employee provides institutional guidance.
Oh, that makes sense.
It fulfills the younger worker's psychological need for immediate feedback and respect while keeping the senior employee engaged.
It bridges the gap. But what happens when the gap isn't bridged? Professor, we need to transition to the dark side of the syllabus. Because if organizational culture is ignored, if managers lean into theory X toxicity, and if followers feel their basic assumptions are violated, the workplace doesn't just become annoying, it becomes hostile.
This is perhaps the most critical component of organizational psychology. A toxic culture is a breeding ground for harassment and workplace violence.
Right.
The EEOC legally defines sexual harassment in several ways, primarily quid pro quo leveraging power for sexual favors, usually involving a clear power dynamic and hostile environment harassment.
And the mechanism behind hostile environment harassment isn't usually a single catastrophic event. It's a pattern. It's the normalization of offensive jokes, exclusionary language, or subtle intimidations that systematically degrade the psychological safety of the employee. And it applies to all protected classes, right? Race, religion, age, disability.
Exactly. When psychological safety erodes completely, it can escalate to workplace violence, which ranges from threats and sabotage to actual physical assault. The statistics are just chilling. Murder is the second leading cause of death in the workplace.
Wow.
And tragically, it is the primary cause of death for women at work, heavily driven by domestic violence situations that breach the boundary of the workplace.
That is absolutely horrifying. And from an internal perspective, what is the psychological trigger that causes an employee to lash out aggressively against their own company or colleagues?
Usually a profound sense of injustice. There's a landmark study by Greenberg from 1993 that beautifully illustrates the mechanism of retaliation.
Oh, the PACE study.
Yes, students were hired to do a task, and then their pay rate was altered.
Yeah.
One group was given a thorough, respectful explanation for the change. The other group was given a curt, dismissive, uninformative explanation.
They were basically just treated like a number, a total violation of interpersonal respect.
Exactly. And the researchers set up a scenario where the students believed they could take their payment themselves without the supervisor tracking the exact amount. The group that received the disrespectful, curt explanation stole significantly more money from the researchers.
Let's unpack the mechanism there, because it isn't just that they were angry. Under equity theory, theft is a psychological tool to restore balance.
Yes.
If you strip away my dignity with a curt explanation, I will steal from you to restore my sense of agency and basically balance the cosmic scales.
That is a brilliant synthesis. The theft isn't about the money, it's about ego defense. And this highlights the paramount importance of procedural justice, the fairness of the processes by which outcomes are determined.
So procedural justice is basically the ultimate shield against workplace hostility. If an employee feels the process of layoffs or pay cuts or promotions is transparent, logical, and fair, they might hate the outcome, but they won't retaliate.
Right.
But if the process is opaque and disrespectful, you light the fuse.
Precisely. Greenberg and Barling found several predictors for this. A history of aggression plus alcohol predicts violence against coworkers. Feeling unfairly treated, that lack of procedural justice is the strongest predictor of workplace aggression against a supervisor. And job insincerity predicts aggression against subordinates.
Okay, Professor, I think that is a profound place to conclude today's syllabus.
Ah.
I am officially stepping out of my student role now.
Class is dismissed. To briefly recap our journey through section 13.3 today, we've completely dismantled the idea that money alone buys happiness, replacing it with the vital need for work content variety and role clarity.
Yeah.
We explored the hidden cognitive load of telecommuting, the profound impact of Theory X versus Theory Y management, the architecture of team culture, and how that critical field of procedural justice prevents an organization from collapsing into toxicity.
It is a massive amount of psychological friction to process, and it changes how you view your own 9 to 5. Which brings us to you, our listener. You are an active node in the social network of your workplace. You aren't just observing these dynamics, you are participating in them.
You are either reinforcing the basic assumptions of your culture or you are actively challenging them. So consider your own specific followership style. Are you unknowingly creating friction in your career by expecting a transactional leader to give you transformational inspiration? How might managing up by communicating your follower needs change your own job satisfaction tomorrow?
Exactly. And we want to leave you with one final, completely new thought to mull over on your own. We spent this entire deep dive establishing that the work content factor, the variety, the difficulty, the need for human mastery is the ultimate driver of your daily job satisfaction. But we are currently standing on the precipice of an artificial intelligence revolution. If AI begins to automate the most challenging, complex, and varied parts of your daily tasks, leaving you only with the routine work of checking the algorithm's output, what happens to your job satisfaction? If the machine takes the challenge, will a paycheck finally be enough? Or will we have to completely redefine what it means to go to work? Keep questioning the data, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.